And we're live. Welcome to the Sam Podcast. Due to some inconveniences and busyness of our current rankers, I've decided to take it into my own hands to do your very own 12 team power rankings for the players. Now, I tried to make this as unbiased as possible, not like the unlike current rankers, but what we're going to see is some current data of my matrix that I built using my own time and some Excel spreadsheets. I wish I could showcase you and share my screen to show you what I'm going through, but it's currently on a different screen, so if you see me looking over here, that's why. So, this matrix, I will preface, is not perfect. I'll give you the ins and outs of what I'm calculating to give you guys your current score. I'll give you a current rank of where you sit and where I see going forward based on the past 3 weeks and seasons worth of data, as well as going into the future, your teams. So let's jump in. I'll give you a quick rundown of how this matrix is built out. So we're taking and weighting heavily on win percentage. So what is your current win percentage? So 30% of your rank is going to come from that. Our next highest is going to be your star player ability, so your best players. That's weighted 15%. Next is going to be your average point four or points for. How much points have you scored, which is weighted towards 12%. Then after that is going to be your positional depth. How much depth have you had on your team? That's weighted 10%, along with your activity. So trade history and waiver wire activity are also going to be scored on our 10% weight. And then additionally, points against. That's weighted at an 8%. And then we also have your past schedule, so your team strength schedule from the last 3 games, and then your future schedule over the next 3 games. So I took a bunch of data from your points for, points against, win percentage, and then I also ranked just on my personal opinion. I know it's just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. I know I'm biased, but I try to keep it as unbiased as possible, ranking you on a scale of 1 to 10 for your previous schedule, your future schedule, your positional depth, star player, injury, impact, which is also weighted 5%. I forgot to mention that. Your trade history and your waiver activity, giving you a final matrix score and ranking you amongst our league mates. I'll do a full commentary kind of breaking down why I gave you a score to give you that overall matrix. So let's begin. We'll start with number 12, and I think you could guess it. It's Bryn. Giving us an overall score, and I tried to keep this on a score of 1 to 100, but it didn't turn out to be that. I didn't have enough time to kind of make it out to be on a score of 1 to 100, so the highest score is a 53.88, and the lowest score is Bryn, giving us an 18.78 overall score. Now, win percentage, 1 win, giving us a 14% win percentage. That's obviously going to play a part into Bryn's overall ranking, but something to take note is the star ability. So his star players, obviously that's the next weight, and there's just no one on this team. I mean, other than Jalen Hurts, who he just put on his trademark, he's got no assets to sell. I mean, who is he going to sell on this team? You got Chuba Hubbard, Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey's coming in week 10, so he's worthless. Chuba Hubbard has a rookie that might steal time from him, which we'll get to with Justin's team. You got Jerry Jeudy, maybe wide receiver 1 in Cleveland with Jameis Winston, who knows. Dallas Goedert is finally coming back from injury, so tight end 1. Tank Dell has done absolutely nothing, even with a Nico Collins injured. Christian Kirk absolutely doing nothing on this horrific Jaguars offense. And I mean the bench. I gave him a positional depth of 2 out of 10 just because I mean Rachaad White finally does something with 2 touchdowns, but again is in a split backfield with Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving, the rookie that we all didn't see coming. Well, I saw coming because I didn't keep him in the 6th round. And then the only other bright spot is Keon Coleman, who I mean now Amari Cooper joins this offense. So there's no bright lights. There's no bright lights. And I will say he has had a very tough schedule. I gave him a 9 out of 10 in terms of he's played very hard teams these last 3 games. His last 3 games have been Mark, Josh Kestner, and Kenny G. But if you look at his points, average points for, he's averaging 75 points a game this entire season. I mean, that's just not going to cut it. So, Bryn is last, coming in 12th. We'll move on to number 11, which we have Santos. And he comes in with a score of 24.85. And let me tell you, folks, his win percentage, not great. Obviously, at 28.5% with 2 wins. I will say, his points for is not bad. 103 points for. And his points against, he has a decent amount of points against, 723 points against. Now, I gave him a previous schedule of 7 out of 10. He has played some rough teams, and the schedule does get a little lighter. He has a 5 out of 10 for future schedule, meaning that he's going to play somewhat easier teams. He does have Guy going forward. He has Justin, and then he has me. So he has a decently easier schedule, but I would say in terms of what's not going well with this team is obviously injury impact, right? He got a 2 out of 10 for injuries. He loses Chris Godwin, which obviously affects his star impact players. I give him a 3 out of 10 for just star players and star impact because other than Derrick Henry, I mean, Tanks Bisbee, maybe, like, he's turning out to be an RB2. Like, he's starting to get more carries, and he does have Travis Etienne on the bench, so it's either or type of situation. So that's another bright spot. Stefon Diggs, I mean, he's been surprisingly pretty good this year, right? Been wide receiver 9 on the year, which is pretty awesome. But other than that, like, you're having to play Ricky Pearsall in your flex, right? And the wide receiver 2 is, I mean, Terry McLaurin. He has made a couple trades, right? So he traded for Brock Purdy, gave up Austin Eckler. I kind of like that move, but again, Brock Purdy's about to go on bye in week 10, and he loses all his weapons with Ayuk going out and Debo being sick, for instance. Like, okay, really interesting. And then Christian McCaffrey comes back, so maybe that hurts his ceiling for his QB play. And Dak has just been absolutely atrocious. So Santos sits at number 11. Coming in at number 10, and this one's really surprising, we have Noah. Noah came in with a score of 29.97, so 5 points ahead of Santos. And then he's 3 points behind the number 9 slot, which we'll get to in a sec. But the big stories with Noah, obviously he has a 4-3 record, so the win percentage is not a problem. But what's really hurting him is his future schedule. I gave him a 2 out of 10. And what's really going to happen is, let's take a look at Noah's next 3 games. I mean, he has upcoming Mark, who he's playing this week. Then he has Kessner, and then he has Josh. So he has some tough matchups coming up these next 3 weeks that he could potentially lose. I mean, if he beats Josh, or at least gets 1 out of the 3, then he's looking at a 6 or 5-5 record. That could cut it to playoffs, but another big story is obviously losing Mike Evans, right? I mean, he's going to be out for the at least next 4 weeks, and I kind of gave him a low positional depth because of that. So with giving him a 4 out of 10 for positional depth, just because if you look at his bench, he has Sean Tucker, who he spent a lot of fab on, spent about $12 in fab for him to just get absolutely wiped out from the rotation because Rachaad White is now back in the lineup. So that doesn't really help. Juju is now gone, especially with DeAndre Hopkins entering into the Kansas City offense. So there's really not much depth with Cam Akers on the bench, Dameon Pierce as running backs. Like, his flex play is having to be Zach Moss, who's been atrocious, getting phased out of the offense with Chase Brown taking most of the snaps and out carrying him. His only work really in the receiving backfield and checkdowns, with last week having 3 receptions for 33 yards, but absolutely atrocious in terms of efficiency on the run game. He's averaging 1.17 yards. So the flex play is definitely questionable, and then just the star power between DJ Moore and Garrett Wilson, his wide receiver 1 and 2, is a little bit questionable now that Devontae enters the mix, limiting Garrett Wilson's obviously ceiling. But we'll see what happens with this team. Obviously, he has a tough sledding ahead. I will say Devon Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs do get a huge boost now that Tua is coming back. Gibbs looked great on the ground, so those are definitely the highlights. That's why I definitely gave him a 6 out of 10 in terms of star power, which is way above Santos and Bryn. But still, Noah in 10th, mostly because, again, some of these questions that he's going to have to fulfill, especially with the wide receiver role and flex play. Coming in at 9, we have Josh Kobayashi, giving us an overall score of 32.98. And the big stories with Josh, okay, so he's got a 4-3 record. That's pretty good. He has a very similar points for from Noah, coming in with a points for average of 102 on average. But his last 3 games, not impressive. He's coming in with a 1-2 record in the last 3 games, playing Ken, Jacob, and Guy. Guy, will get to him, kind of a hurt situation, barely pulls out the win, 86-82. And he has some pretty tough matchups upcoming. He's going to have Justin, he's going to have me, and he's going to have Noah. So definitely, I gave him a 4 out of 10 for future schedule. And then additionally, some waiver wire activity coming with Josh. So this is where he did get some additional benefits. So I gave him a 6 out of 10 in waiver activity for the upcoming Hopkins trade or Hopkins acquisition, paying $47. I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens with him on Kansas City, but he's going to be in a good offense. Granted, Kansas City hasn't been throwing the ball much. We'll see what happens. Definitely a bright spot, but losing Ayuk is definitely he hasn't done much, but in terms of star power, that definitely affects him, and Olave's injured, doesn't have a good quarterback situation, so there's a lot of question marks. You're having to start Courtland Sutton, who just put up an absolute dud in Week 7 as your wide receiver 2. Running backs have been surprisingly good for this team. David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and Tony Pollard have been dark horses that no one saw coming this year, and JJ has been JJ. So I gave Josh a star power 5 out of 10 because he has JJ and Josh Allen, and then the running backs kind of holding this team together. But he's a wide receiver 2 away, which hopefully that's where DeAndre Hopkins fills that role. So Josh coming in at 9. At 8, we have Jacob. Jacob, even though with the low win percentage of 28.57, this team's been on fire. Absolutely on fire, scoring points, bring up his total average points for to 98, so he's starting to climb. And let me tell you, Kareem Hunt, he paid $29 in Fab for him and has been absolutely killing it these past couple weeks. Obviously, bye on Week 6, but Week 5, 18 points. Week 7, 21 points against a great San Fran D, holding it together. Aaron Jones has been absolutely exceptional. RB13 on the current year, and is just looking great now that he's back. Amari Cooper's now on the Bills, as he will continue to probably expand that role. Got 1 touchdown, 14 points in Week 7. There's definitely some highlights and trending up. Additionally, I want to point out that he also has Caleb Williams that might be able to fulfill his role at QB. So I gave who we only paid $0 for. I gave Jacob a 7 out of 10 in terms of waiver activity, and then potential depth, I gave him 7. His depth is pretty good. He's still got Singletary on the bench. Obviously, Tyrone Tracy's probably starting to cut into that work, but Ty Chandler to kind of handcuff the situation with Aaron Jones. There's a lot to like. Najee and that trade with Luke, I will say. Let me just read out this trade to you. So he gave away Nick Chubb, which obviously a big asset, but he got some depth with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Najee, right? He gave away a 9th round pick as well. Will we to help fix with the situation? It seems to be working for now, and honestly, I like the move, giving away an asset for where he's at record-wise to hopefully make a playoff run. So, in terms of his upcoming schedule, I gave him a 4 out of 10. He will be facing, so he does get Bryn, so that should be an easy win, but he does get Luke and Mark, so he does have some tough matchups coming up. But I gave him a 4 out of 10 just because he does have Bryn upcoming. So after that, we have In number 7, Justin. So Justin comes in with an overall score of 40.35. So just barely outreaching Jacob. But right behind the next place, with the next place being 40.7, so only 0.25 behind sixth place. And the big things upholding this team is obviously the star power. He's got some stars on this team with now Bijan and Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1. He's got Drake London, who's a solid RB1 or wide receiver 2. Or he's wide receiver 3 on the year. That's crazy. So he's got the star power in the wide receivers, and this Rico Dowell as well. The big question marks is obviously quarterback play. He's starting Bo Nix. He picked up Tua Tagovailoa. And obviously he'll have Pacheco coming back. So there's some definite star power, and I will say I gave him an 8 out of 10 for trade history just because of the management of these trades. I mean, getting Bijan, buying low on Bijan right before he pops off for 24 points, giving away Chuba Hubbard, who an asset that is declining. Obviously, selling high on Chuba Hubbard. He has the rookie, what's his name? Jonathan Brooks sitting on his IR slot just in case, obviously, he comes back. So he has a lot of star potential on this team, as well as great management with the trades. That ranks him super high, even with, and obviously with a 4-3 record. And upcoming, Justin, I gave him an 8 out of 10 for future schedule. So in terms of that next schedule, he has Josh, Santos, and then Bryn. So definitely a really high. Now, what's hurting this team is his waiver wire activity. And this is more of just a flame. We're not going to even, well, I have to bring this up. Dontavian Wicks paying $45. 45. That alone gave him a 1 out of 10 for his waiver activity. I don't even care. You whiff on him, and then you drop him, like absolutely crazy. So that's the reason why Justin is at 6 or 7. Sorry. And then coming at 6, we have myself. And I try to be as unbiased as possible. I did. I gave myself a 3 out of 10 for the last 3 games in terms of my previous schedule. So obviously that I played in the last 3 games. I played Justin, I played Mark, and I played Guy. So obviously losing to Mark was tough. Losing to Justin was tough. I mean, I beat a very injured Guy, so that obviously doesn't really count. And then additionally, like my points for is very low. 93.86. That's the second lowest in the whole league. So definitely those are dragging me down. What I will say is the star potential. Gave myself an 8 out of 10 just due to you got Tyreek Hill, you got Christian McCaffrey coming off in week 10, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, who's coming off on IR in week 9. You got T. Higgins, who's been absolutely exceptional. You have Jaden Reed, wide receiver 5. I mean, running backs are definitely questionable. I will say that. Josh Jacobs has been fire, though. Javonte Williams is showing some life and has Carolina this week. And Joe Burrow, QB5. QB5 on the year. Now, obviously, I'm being very biased here. I will admit. That's why I tried to give myself a low score where I did see fit. So injury impact, obviously, I gave myself a very low score. Been very injured these past, obviously, whole entire year. So that brought myself down 3 out of 10. And trade history, I would say that trade with Jacob is been pretty even up until this point with Amari Cooper going to the Bills. Did not see that coming. I had a feeling that he might go to the Chiefs. There were trade rumors of him going to the Chiefs. And then waiver wire activity. I gave myself a 3 out of 10. Haven't really made any big waiver wire moves. Just been kind of fielding. Obviously, I made a lot early on. The Trey Sermon for 23 fab turned out to be good for only 1 week. Honestly, not a great fab acquisition. But enough about me. I don't want to be like Luke. Let's go on to number 5, which is Guy. Guy came in with an overall score of 43.12, just 0.2 behind 4th place. So, again, Guy has incredible star power. I gave him a 9 out of 10. I mean, this lineup is just absolutely stacked. You got Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Malik Neighbors, Cooper Kupp, who trade rumors around him. We'll see. And CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb has not been great, but who cares when you have Malik Neighbors and Cooper Kupp? I mean, this lineup is just absolutely stacked. I will say, where I did rank him a little bit low was the trade history. So he did get a 3 out of 10, but that's just because minor trades got the low end of the stick with the Jameson Williams trade now being on suspension, so that definitely limits kind of his backups and his positional depth. But honestly, there's a lot to like about this team. I mean, he has 108 points for. He has a great record with 4-3, and I will say one thing that is going to really help him is his future schedule. So upcoming, I gave him an 8 out of 10. He has Santos this week. He's got Bryn next week, and he has Luke. So 2 out of those 3 should be wins. Luke will be definitely obviously a tough matchup. We'll see what happens with that. But 2 out of 3, and that's putting Guy at already a 6-4 record, which is that's a playoff team right there. And as soon as he continues to get healthier and healthier, which he's already looking like a healthy team, I did give him a 5.5 out of 10. He's the only one with a 5 point or a 0.5 injury rating, just because he's now coming off injury. So obviously had a lot of injuries in history, but coming off a lot of histories of injuries, getting healthier. So that's the only reason why he's probably lower, is because of those 2 metrics of waiver wire activity, trade history, and then injury impact. But overall, looking great. And then his previous schedule was obviously pretty tough. So kind of going into the next team, we have number 4, which is Ken. Ken is coming in with a overall ranking of 43.37, so again, 0.2 higher than Guy, so just barely above. And the big things is obviously he has that star power with those running backs. I mean, Saquon and Kyron have just been absolutely tearing it up. Now there are some question marks now with this team, and just in terms of where it looks to be the schedule. So I gave him a 2 out of 10 for previous schedule and a 2 out of 10 for future schedule as he's moving forward. And I will just kind of bring up his schedule real quick. So over the last 3 games, he's played Josh, he's played Santos, and he's played Bryn. So again, now he has a high win percentage, so that's obviously going to offset a lot of this. And again, only the past and future schedule is weighted 5% of his total ranking. So I won't harp on this too much, but he does have upcoming Luke. He has Kessner, and he also has Mark. So 3 of the, we're going to get to some of those teams. So he has a hard schedule, and then additionally, his positional depth is a little weaker. You'll see there, like he has Keenan Allen, Michael Pittman, Juwan Jennings. I mean, who knows what he'll be, but his running back depth after that is Chase Brown and Alexander Madison, who have looked good. I will say, now that Baker's lost all his weapons, we'll see how he turns out. I mean, he's now starting Kirk Cousins, so we'll see how this team's actually turns out. I will say one huge acquisition was the $2 from Mark Andrews Fab acquisition. I mean, 14 and 18. We all counted Andrews out for most of the year. He's looking great now, so that could be a potential great tight end 1 for Ken, which really lifts this team even more. Going into our next team with number 3, we have Luke. Luke comes in with an overall score of 44.5, so a full point ahead of Ken. And what gives this team, again, is positional depth. He has an 8 out of 10 for positional depth. I mean, this team is so deep. It really is impressive how much depth he has now. Let me just pull up his team. He just traded for Waddle. He has his starting roster is looking like Cook, Raheem Mostert, Brian Thomas, George Pickens, Trey McBride, and then he also has on the bench Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, so 2 great handcuffs. Nick Chubb is sitting on the bench, who looked honestly pretty good with the limited amount of touches that he had. Debo is coming off an illness, and then Deontay Johnson. So theoretically, obviously, Deontay, we'll see what happens with Bryce Young back in. That might tank his value now. but Debo should be fine now that Ayuk is out of the picture. Pickens looks phenomenal with Wilson. Brian Thomas is rookie of the year, potentially, with maybe Neighbors being that 1-2. But overall, fantastic lineup in terms of depth. The star power, I gave him a 7 out of 10, so not as big as some of these other teams, but it's just so deep. I mean, depending on the week or depending on injuries, it will kind of determine where this team goes. I will say I did give him the highest trade score other than Justin. So Justin had an 8 out of 10. I gave Luke a 7 out of 10 just because of these trades with Bryn, getting Waddle off of him, giving up Mason when Mason's value is just declining, and then giving up Tank Delve, who's absolutely nothing now, and then also getting Chubb. So Chubb from Jacob, definitely a huge upside trade as we go into the later parts of the year as Chubb gets healthier, gets more acclimated to the offense, definitely brings another RB depth or star power with James Cook and potentially Nick Chubb alongside. So definitely some really good spots with this team. But again, we don't want to talk about Luke. We don't like talking about Luke because he talks about himself. Next point, Josh Kestner coming in at number 2. Josh Kestner gave a rating of 45.39, so a full point above Luke. And what is really driving this team, even though his win percentage might be a little lower, coming in at 3-4, he does have obviously star players, and he has been hurt. Let's face it, he's coming off injuries. With obviously, let me pull up his team. Give me 1 second. I'm playing him this week, so we're hoping that he doesn't. Kenneth Walker has been absolutely amazing. Let me just say, potential RB1 on the year going forward. Brian Robinson, absolutely amazing. A.J. Brown now coming back off injury. Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously fantastic with this Lions offense, just absolutely rolling teams. George Kittle, tight end 1 on the year. I mean, fantastic. Marvin Harrison, we'll see. Wide receiver 28. I mean, he has not been great recently, but I like the bench. He has full potential young guys. Ladd McConkey, who he picked up for $11 a fab. Crazy. Roman Dunze, Jalen Warren, we'll see. Austin Eckler, great trade. Again, just impacting some depth on him. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for depth. And then also, because of the trade, gave him a 6 out of 10 for trades as well. So again, he has a lot of points for. He comes in with 110 average points for. That's second in the league behind the number 1 team who we're about to talk about. And additionally, this team it's got a lot of star power. 9 out of 10. There's only 3 teams with a 9 out of 10 star power. It's going to be Guy, it's going to be Kestner, and it's going to be this last team who we're just about to talk about. I mean, this team, absolutely stacked. Mark, 9 out of 10 on star power. I gave him a 9 out of 10 for depth as well, depth pieces. I mean, when your depth is J.K. Dobbins, who is a running back 1 on any other team probably, or running back 2 at least. You got Khalil Shakir, who, I mean, obviously has not looked amazing, but solid piece on a good offense. JSN has obviously disappointed a little bit recently, but I mean, the starting roster is just absolutely stacked with DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, Lamar Jackson, James Conner, and Brock Bowers has been a revelation, especially now that Devontae's out there. He's going to take up all the target share. It's great. I mean, so average points for is 119. That's obviously first. Points against is only 94, so that's definitely what brings him down a little bit. But again, injury impact, like I gave him a 6 out of 10 just because he's not really facing any injuries other than like maybe Alvin Kamara is like a little banged up, just coming in with limited. DK Metcalf limited and Zay Flowers limited in practice today, but for the most part, like, I mean, there hasn't been. Oh, Nico Collins, I forgot. This team has Nico Collins. I forgot about that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that's why his injury history is a little bit, give him a 6 out of 10. But overall, this gives him an overall matrix score of 53.88, which is a whole 8 points above second place Josh Kestner. And he still has $91 in fab, by the way. So if he wants anyone off the waiver wire that tends to break out towards the end of the year, he can make it happen. But yeah, that's my overall rankings of the entire league. Let me know if you like anything like this going forward. Obviously, this is not perfect, this matrix, but I try to do the best that I can. I hope you guys enjoyed, since there's no other podcasts being made with the rankers indefinitely on break, so maybe I'll do this next week. Peace!